In 1996, Princess Diana walked away from the British royal family with £17 million. The newspapers called it a victory. Charles and Camilla said nothing publicly. And that silence, from both of them, was the first sign that Diana hadn't won it all. Because here's the number nobody talked about. £17 million sounds like freedom. But Diana's annual cost of living, security, staff, residence, travel, at the standard the palace itself had created for her, was estimated at over £2 million per year. Do the math. £17 million divided by £2 million a year. She had 8 years. 8 years before the money the palace called generous would be completely gone. Charles knew those numbers. His legal team built that settlement. And Camilla Parker Bowles, who had been waiting 15 years, simply had to wait 8 more. Today, we're not talking about the fairy tale that fell apart. We're talking about the financial architecture of a trap, built by an institution, maintained by a marriage, and designed with a very specific expiration date. Diana Frances Spencer was 19 years old when she became engaged to Prince Charles. 19. No financial advisors, no independent legal counsel, no one in her corner explaining what she was about to sign. And here is the detail that changes everything. When Diana married into the royal family, she didn't receive a salary. She received an allowance. There was a profound difference between those two words. A salary belongs to you. You earn it. You control it. You can save it, invest it, leave with it. An allowance is permission. Diana's annual allowance from the civil list was reported at around £600,000 per year, a number that sounds extraordinary until you understand that every single pound had to be accounted for, justified, and approved by palace administrators. Her clothing budget submitted to staff for authorization. Her household expenses reviewed by officials who reported to the institution, not to her. Her charitable donations scrutinized for whether they aligned with palace interests. A woman whose face appeared on the front pages of newspapers in 40 countries, asking permission to write a check. Meanwhile, Charles maintained a private financial life Diana was never given access to. The Duchy of Cornwall, a vast estate generating millions annually, was Charles's domain entirely. Diana saw none of it directly. The famous letters Charles wrote to Camilla during their marriage, intimate, detailed, written during Diana's pregnancies, during the years Diana was being photographed as the perfect royal wife, were composed on an estate whose income Diana could not touch. He was writing love letters to another woman on land that was technically part of the life Diana had been sold, and she had no financial standing to challenge any of it. Access, never ownership. Something shifted around 1987. Diana began to understand that Charles and Camilla were not going away. The affair had not ended when she married him. It had simply moved underground. Phone calls, private meetings, a network of mutual friends who kept the secret and kept her out. Diana would later describe calling Camilla directly, asking her to end it. Camilla reportedly told her there was nothing to end. That conversation, a young woman calling her husband's lover and being dismissed, tells you everything about the power structure Diana was living inside. Camilla had something Diana didn't. Not just Charles's love, financial independence. Camilla Parker Bowles had her own home, her own income, her own social network entirely outside the palace system. Diana had £600,000 a year in monitored allowance and no exit strategy. So Diana did what she could. She built something they couldn't touch. She chose charity work that bypassed palace structures entirely. AIDS patients, landmine victims, children's hospitals. Every handshake was a message. Every image was a negotiation. What Diana had understood was that her public image was worth more than any allowance the palace could grant or revoke. She couldn't control her household budget. She couldn't stop Charles from calling Camilla every night. But she could build a form of capital so valuable, so global, so deeply human, that no legal team could put a number on it. The palace noticed. Advisors began tracking Diana's appearances with new attention. Her schedule was scrutinized. Questions were raised internally about whether her work was becoming, the word used in some accounts, destabilizing. A princess the public loved more than the monarchy itself was not a princess. She was a problem. Then came November 1995. Diana sat in front of a BBC camera without palace permission and said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." 200 million people watched. Charles confirmed the affair publicly, not to protect Diana, but to control the narrative before she could. The institution moved immediately. The Queen recommended an early divorce. The legal teams assembled, and the real negotiation began. Not about love, not about children, not about 15 years of marriage. About money, titles, protection, silence.
Now stop. Because this is the moment the trap closes. Not the accident in Paris, not the divorce announcement, not the Panorama interview. Right here, in a lawyer's office in 1996. Look at what was about to happen, and look at it as a financial transaction, not as a love story. Diana entered the marriage at 19 with no independent wealth, no legal protection, and no understanding of the system she was entering. For 15 years, the institution gave her access to extraordinary resources, but made sure she owned none of them. No salary, no property in her name, no financial identity outside the crown. When she became dangerous, when her public capital exceeded the institution's ability to control her, they offered her an exit. £17 million, a number their own accountants had calculated would last approximately 8 years at the cost of living they had created for her. Then they removed her HRH title, which was not a vanity. It was a financial instrument worth over £500,000 per year in security costs alone. Then they limited her security to official engagements only, leaving her to fund her own protection privately from the same $17 million that was already on a countdown. Every decision, every clause, every condition of that settlement moved in one direction. Not toward Diana's freedom, toward Diana's exposure. They didn't push her out into the world. They pushed her out and then removed every wall that had been protecting her. This is the trap. Not a conspiracy, not a plan drawn in secret rooms with villainous intent. A system, operating exactly as systems do. Quietly, legally, with the full weight of institutional knowledge against a woman who had no one in her corner who understood money the way her opponents did. Diana didn't lose because she was weak. Diana lost because she was 19 when they counted the cards, and she didn't even know there was a game. Diana initially asked for £50 million in the divorce, a number that reflected the actual financial reality of what she was giving up. Not just a marriage, but an entire institutional infrastructure worth far more than any lump sum. Charles's legal team refused. The counteroffer? £17 million. Final. She also asked to keep the title Her Royal Highness. Refused. Without HRH, Diana had to pay for her own security, close to £500,000 annually, just to maintain a basic level of safety appropriate for one of the most recognizable women on earth. That figure alone consumed a quarter of her annual settlement allowance. Every year. Meanwhile, Camilla faced no such negotiation. No title stripped, no security reduced, no countdown clock on her finances. While Diana signed away her protections, Camilla was being quietly reintroduced into Charles's public life. A slow, institutional rehabilitation funded by the very resources Diana had just been stripped of. The palace gave with one hand and built Camilla's future with the other. In August 1997, Diana was in Paris, not on an official engagement. Her security that night was not palace-funded. She was driven by Henri Paul, the Ritz Hotel's head of security, not a trained royal protection officer, because hiring her own professional security team for a private trip would have cost thousands of pounds directly from her settlement. Every day Diana lived as a private individual rather than as HRH
She was spending down that 8-year clock. The paparazzi pursuing her through the Paris tunnel were chasing an image worth millions on the open market. An image Diana had built herself. An image the palace had profited from for 15 years. An image that now existed entirely outside institutional protection, because the institution had made sure of it. None of this proves intent, but systems do not need intent to produce devastating outcomes. The financial architecture of that divorce settlement did not protect Diana. It exposed her. Precisely, calculatedly, legally exposed her. And 1 year after signing it, on a night when her own security costs had forced her to rely on a hotel driver in an unvetted car, she was gone. She had access, never ownership. And in the end, she didn't even have access. Diana's estate at the time of her death was valued at $21.5 million, just $4.5 million more than what she had received 13 months earlier. The countdown was already running. Camilla became queen consort in 2005. She now has access to the full financial infrastructure of the British Crown. Residences, staff, security, income from the Duchy of Cornwall, state-funded everything. Everything Diana was stripped of in 1996. Everything Diana paid for out of her own pocket in 1997. Everything Diana was told she didn't deserve. The palace gave Diana millions. Their accountants knew exactly how long it would last. Charles kept Camilla. Camilla got the crown. And Diana got the one thing none of them could calculate, control, or outlast: the love of the people. But what she really wanted, what she spent 15 years quietly building toward, was something that money inside the system could never buy: independence without permission. And that, more than the affairs, more than the interviews, more than Charles and Camilla and every letter and legal document and leaked story, may have been the most dangerous thing about her. If you want to understand the real story behind women, power, and money, the version they leave out of the documentaries, subscribe. Because next week, we're following the money somewhere darker. A woman who understood the system even better than Diana, who used it until the day it used her back.